All right, so I am going to flip to the title card, play some music, and we'll pretend we know what we're doing. Here we go. Welcome to Semi-Auto Magic and Miffed Gorax Fuck Shit Up. Now today, my intrepid partner, Miffed Gorax, is somewhere deep in the jungles of Panama, and so we have enlisted someone who we used to play with here in our meta, Refyougee. Say hi.
Howdy.
All right, so one of the things that we've been doing here at Miffed and Semi is we've been running our way up the point value, sort of doing a journeyman league. And once you're done a journeyman league, you start to sort of move into doing tournaments. We've seen on our YouTube channel, anybody watching Twitch, you can look below for the YouTube channel. We also show tournament games. Now, Refyougee, you play in a lot of tournaments.
I try to.
In fact, last year you were on the WTC team for Canada, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I was on Team 1 as the captain for it.
Awesome. So you obviously play in a lot of tournaments. You've represented Canada internationally. When you're going to play a tournament, what's the stuff that you do to get ready for it?
I mean, it's a long process for sure. I mean, there's the short-term stuff, like making sure you have your templates and your models, and your dice and your tokens and all that stuff. And I mean, it's not trivial to make sure you have all of that set aside. But really, that's just an organizational thing. The more important aspect of getting ready for those events is making sure you've got your lists down, you've got them practiced, also that you've got, if possible, a good read on what you're going to be encountering when you go to this tournament. For a lot of local scenes, it may not, at the same time, it may not matter as much, but it may be easier to get an idea of what you'll be seeing. So those are the main things. I mean, practicing and making sure you're comfortable with what you're bringing to the tournament is probably the biggest factor.
Now, the stuff we've seen on our channel so far has all been sort of local meta stuff. We've recorded in Kingston. We've just recorded at Canadian Shield here in Ottawa, which was a hardcore tournament. But we haven't been able to record at any big cons. What's different when you're prepping for a con as opposed to just prepping for a normal tournament?
Well, when you're prepping for a con, it's a little more difficult to anticipate who's going to be there. If it's a local tournament, you might know that player X has been tearing up your game night with a new tier list, or some new warlock maybe who goes by the name of Bradigus. It may be that, or it may be something else completely. But so when in those local events, you're going to know. Bob is going to be there. He's going to have the thing I've been afraid of to fight, and you can oftentimes sort of tech for that almost if you really want to. But in a larger con, you pretty much have to be ready for anything. What becomes more important is reading the tendencies of, say, the meta. You have to think, well, okay, what is popular right now? Do I want to play a counter to that, or do I want to at least make sure somewhere in my lists I have a good answer for it? Or in some cases, you have people that read the counter and develop a counter to the counter. So there's always that second guessing that goes on. And people who've been successful in the past, in my opinion anyway, were successful because they can anticipate what's going to be everywhere.
So it sounds like there's a lot of metagame that is larger than the just sort of normal list chicken that we see when you're standing in front of your opponent and you've got his two lists and your two lists, and you're wondering which one of these should I be taken for which list. You're having to take into account national tendencies, in our case between Canada and the US, international tendencies, as well as what you've got that you could actually build up to play against. Now, do you say stick with one faction, or do you tend to gravitate towards a faction that is either getting more interesting models or more powerful models or anything like that when you're getting ready for a big tournament, or even when you're going to the WTC thinking 6 months ahead?
Yeah, well, the WTC is definitely a special case because of how it's a big lead up to this culminating event.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, although you do find out what list your opponents will be bringing ahead of time, you still have to lock them in before you have that.
Before you have that information,
yeah. I mean, as far as picking a faction, I mean, I think you should do what I say and perhaps not what I do. I mean, I bounce between factions all the time, but practicing one specific faction is going to be beneficial, I think, to most people. Unless you're able to get enough games that you get the equivalent experience someone would have, but with multiple factions. I mean, I've been playing Crix since Mark II, played Signar about 1 year after that, Circle about another year after that, and just sort of started picking up factions here and there. But you're going to be most successful if you just practice with what you feel comfortable.
Just the one you feel comfy with.
Go ahead. Well, that's going to matter more in the end than jumping on a new caster or a new warlock that you feel has an edge,
mm-hmm.
or if you think, oh, this new model came out, totally blew the doors off this, this new caster, this new pick. It's going to matter more that you select something you feel comfortable with than anything else, in my opinion.
So you would say that just sort of as a general rule, it's better to play what you know rather than play to counter?
Yeah, I mean, ideally you'll be able to, arrive at a happy medium between both.
Mm-hmm.
And often, I mean, prepping for specific problematic casters or lists or tactics doesn't usually require inventing completely new lists. It just may mean you include a solo that you normally didn't really think about, or may just mean you swap things around a little bit. Just to prepare yourself. It doesn't mean you need to retool everything. It just means you need to consider what specific option or tool was going to help you out in this matchup. And a lot of that's going to come down to practicing against the matchups you are worried about. It's not always fun asking your opponent or your friend to play the matchup you're most worried about, that you expect to lose. But it's often those games where you'll learn the most.
Yeah, I have found that to be sometimes a problem. I know locally in our meta, we don't see a lot of Asphyxious 2. We don't see a lot of we haven't seen a lot of Veil 2 recently. We haven't seen a lot of Lilith 2. We haven't seen a lot of Epic Haley. And that's great and all, and there's lots of fun games in there, but the problem is you hit a tournament, and what are the first, casters you're going to smack up against? And suddenly you have none of the experience that you need to actually be able to take that kind of challenge head on.
And I think yeah, if you want to get prepared for a tournament and you want to be prepared for those casters, you have to foster an environment where it's okay to play them in a casual game.
Mm-hmm.
As long as all parties are, informed.
As long as you're aware of what's coming down the pipe, you weren't trying just some random list.
Yeah, and so it's good to discuss that. But I think too, it's good. Like, I love playing in different metas and meeting tons of new people. But it's also good to have a couple, friends that you feel a bit closer with, where you can just discuss. Okay, look, I want to see how this matchup goes. I don't think you can say I think it'll be bad for me, or I think it'll be bad for you, or whatever. Just discuss it and then play it out. The nice thing about that, when you go into that playtesting mode with a friend, it's also good that you can often reset a game. Sometimes I'll have games with friends. We get to turn 2, and they'll go, "Oh, I goofed. I'm gonna lose this game. Obviously, let's re-rack. Let's go
Yeah.
again. And let's, instead of in the tournament, it's like, oh, I lose. Okay, well,
You've still got
all
two
right.
more turns where he slowly kills you off because you made this fatal mistake.
Yeah. Whereas you can go to your opponent, your friend, go, oh well, here, let's pretend I didn't do that. Let's rewind, assume I did this instead. And I think that's perfectly valid when you're trying out tactics, because that is to say that no game is ever truly lost until your caster is dead or your opponent's at 5 scenario points, or
Yeah.
But I think it's good to be able to say to a friend, okay, well, look, let's just, we're 20 minutes into this game. Clearly, this is going to end poorly for me. Let's redo it, or the opposite, just so that you both get more out of the game.
Now, I have talked to certain people. I know Tim Banky espouses 100 games with a caster. What's the minimum number of games that you would want to play before wandering into a tournament with a caster?
There's no minimum, I'd say.
No minimum. So you'd pick up a caster. Say you're heading off to TempleCon. Thursday morning. PP says, "Hey, look at this in the store, brand new caster X." You'll grab caster X and go for it.
If I feel comfortable with it. I bought a caster that I bought it Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be playing it at TempleCon. I've never played a game with that caster, and I may try to get a game or two in, the Iron Arena or whatever. But obviously experience is good, and there's no substitute for that. That may contradict what I said earlier, but that's what I'm saying. You have to
do as I say, not as I do. Yeah.
Well, sometimes you feel that compulsion to just, oh, I got this crazy idea. I got to try it out. And there's no time to play test it.
Yes, that can definitely be a factor. Just the time. Now, I'm curious. I've been talking to a lot of people about the number of games they can get in a week. What would your average? Well, let's do two things. What would your average just for a week be? And when you're in tournament prep mode, what's your average?
Well, I don't think there's going to be a big difference between the two. Because I always feel like I'm getting ready for the next tournament.
For the next one, yeah.
But that's really how I approach the game, and I don't think it's for everyone. But this month, January, I was averaging about 7 a week, which is quite high for that. But really, that's because part of it is in Toronto. There's a tournament every week.
Yes.
If not 2 at times. So it. I think a good average to go for is 2 to 3 games a week if you want to get decent in a tournament setting. And it's not really just going to be the number, but it's going to be like your opponents and the level of play you're getting out of those games.
So fewer high-value games would definitely be something, rather than just throwing yourself at noobs and you're maybe overmatched, or you have vastly more experience than them. You're not really going to learn as much, is the idea.
That's possible. And one good substitute, if you're not able to get those games, is to watch games between people. Vassal is fantastic for this, because you may not understand the mechanics of the client, which is a common complaint. But when you see an opponent deploy an army a certain way, and it doesn't take too long to see, they did that well, or I could have done this differently. That I feel that's a good way, and I feel also sometimes even watching new players just slog through a battle box game for the first time, or the second time, or the 10th time. I have sometimes watched those games and gone, I just and been struck by an idea that maybe would have never happened without seeing those two guys.
Something where a person with no preconceived notions of how a caster's supposed to be played will generate a new way of playing that you wouldn't have thought of, because nobody plays them like that, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, because you just see, you see people try to make casters their own, and once in a while there's some really good ideas that happen even at the complete beginner level. So I think watching games, and is good, and that's part of why back when I was still in Ottawa, I did enjoy running the odd event because you got to watch so many games at once.
That's
And
true. That is one of the upsides of being an event organizer or a PG is the fact that you get to play a lot of what we call watch machine. You get to
yeah,
see a lot more games than you would normally. Now,
you get to watch 10, 15 games,
Yeah.
around. Not everyone gets to do that.
Yeah. Now, do you watch a lot of? You mentioned Vassal. A lot of people, especially when they're new, are really not going to be able to hack Vassal. It's not I'd say not an accessible way to watch games. Do you watch a lot on YouTube or any other places that you would
Of
get
course.
your game info?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there are so many good channels now that have videos. Musamis has been doing their thing. Chain Attack has been doing their thing for a while now. But there's also, Advanced Maneuvers. There's the New Jersey Meta guys. I'm sure I'm forgetting a whole bunch. I mean, obviously there's you guys as well that have had definitely a few games that I've watched that I found really interesting. And so there's a lot of people producing that content now.
Yeah. It seems that's been it's been quite a surge in content recently. Obviously, we're new to the scene, but just before and just after us, I've seen a whole bunch of people. Can you attribute that to anything in particular, or do you think it's just sort of reached that critical mass where there's enough people recording enough games that they're just sort of trickling onto YouTube?
I think part of it has to do with how, like esports, like League of Legends and all that stuff, like it's become popular there.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of video games too, like you have people doing let's plays of games, you have people streaming on Twitch all the time. Like it's something that, for some people rivals television. And it's a form of entertainment that is becoming way more popular. So it just makes sense that it would translate to Warmachine as well. So I think it's just a tendency of media,
we're drifting in what they traditionally call a new media direction, especially with this game where there isn't enough people playing the game to support what we would call traditional media. We aren't going to see a Warmachine television station anytime soon.
I don't think so.
No, I have had crazy ideas about asking all the different groups that are producing content right now if they would allow us to rebroadcast and see if we could set up a Twitch channel that runs 24/7, running all the old, not necessarily running new content, maybe 3 or 4 new pieces of content a week, but just so that people could see all of these games and all this stuff. Anyway, that's George's random ramblings here. So we now you're prepping for this tournament. You've done your normal prep. You've done your game prep. Is there anything that you do mentally to deal with the, shall we say, stresses, spending 16 hours on your feet using your brain constantly? I know myself, I play in a 6-hour tournament and I'm spent mentally. My body might be fine, I could go run a marathon, but you ask me what I want for dinner and I can barely come up with an answer.
I mean, for me, part of that starts right when you wake up. I mean, obviously you want to get a good amount of sleep. I'm not the guy who's going to be at the bar till 4 a.m. at a con, and that's its own kind of fun. And it's perfectly fine if you don't qualify for the culminating events of the weekend. But yeah, that's a big one, is making sure you got enough sleep in the morning, giving yourself lots of time to wake up, shower, eat, drink coffee if that's what you do. It is for me. Making sure you're well fed, that you're not rushing. Let's face it. These cons, these events, it's our vacation time.
Mm-hmm.
It's us taking some time off from work, and just having a good time. So for me, it's really about easing into the morning, getting ready, listening to music is for me the thing, and that's for a lot of people, I'm sure that's relaxing as well. And just a lot of people like to, or not, maybe not like to, but one thing a behavior that's pretty common is, everyone will have their armies out on their trays at a big tournament at a con, whatever. Everyone's kind of scoping each other out, going, oh, look what this guy's bringing. He's got, oh, damn, he's got Harbinger tier with 8 Crusaders or whatever. I wasn't thinking of that. And I think it's easy to stress yourself out looking over at everyone's army. So really, you just, I like to just sit by my own tray, talk with a friend, just kind of wait for the the pairings to be announced. Really take it easy.
Wait for the whistle to go, as it were.
Because you could go crazy looking at 50 different list pairs all arrayed everywhere on the tables. Mm-hmm. It'd be easy to drive yourself mad, thinking, okay, how am I going to beat this? This is this. But really, those decisions are made in 30 seconds or the 2 minutes when you pick lists with your first opponent. So
you really shouldn't be going out there and looking at all this different stuff. You're just going to overwhelm yourself. Especially, I would say, at a tournament of the size of TempleCon, where the field is so big that you can't ever even run into, say, a quarter of the field or an eighth of the field. You will never play. So that just looking out at that many things, trying to figure out what you're going to do in that case, really isn't helpful, especially at that point.
Yeah, it's really it's not going to be fruitful. So it's best to just shoot the shit with people, make jokes.
Just try and is it a relaxation thing, being comfortable in the space?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's really important. Especially if you're the kind of person that can get stressed out thinking about all the possibilities, and not everyone's going to be there, but. I think making sure you don't overthink it, because you'll have plenty of time to do that on your clock.
Okay, well, so TempleCon is your next big tournament, correct? That's where you're. I believe you're leaving tomorrow morning.
That's right. Yeah. Bright and early.
I won't ask anything because this may actually go up before your events at TempleCon, so I won't ask you anything about lists or anything.
No worries.
But. Is there anything that you're expecting? Of course, the elephant in the room right now is Bradigus as we record this. Is that something that you're even worried about? I've heard horror stories from Australia and some UK events where we're seeing 50% of the field Bradigus, after turn 1. So with something like that, as I said, I'm not asking you anything about your list or your tech.
No,
Is that something you're worried about when you have somebody like that is at least perceived as being so powerful that they're going to show up a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could all go at length about that particular warlock. Mm-hmm. But when I hear guys on Chain Attack talking about how they can't stop World Watchers because they just fly right off the proverbial shelves.
Yeah.
It tells me to expect that particular one, and I don't think. Warmachine Weekend last year, for example, 2013, was all about the Butcher 3. Mm-hmm. And it was popular at Gen Con because that's when it was released, in 2013, that is. And so I think you definitely do need to consider what will be popular. Because the thing is, and I think it's a truism, but it's still valid, you can't plan for literally every matchup. There are going to be there are going to be list pairs or certain warlocks and warcasters that you won't really have a good answer for because there's like 160 of them. Anyway, moving away from the vague stuff, I do expect to see Bradigus everywhere. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see what the pre-releases are.
Yes.
Something like the Sacral Vault could make a pretty big splash.
Ooh, yeah.
Personally, at $110 US, if it is available, I don't think it'll be changing my list composition at all.
Yeah.
Especially because I'm bringing a Warmachine faction. But something like that will make a splash if it's available, because there is going to be that guy who buys one, has his friend buy one, builds them, has them ready to go for an event that weekend. I don't think that's avoidable. I think it's great that you have people so dedicated to playing the new stuff.
We're starting to see, just watching Facebook, we're starting to see the little deluge of pre-release stuff. We've just seen the new satyr. I can't remember his name now.
Brenos, the Elder Horn.
Yeah, the Elder Horn. Whenever I see those go up, that's the sort of trigger in my head that these are probably things that we will see pre-released at the con. Either that or it's just suspicious timing. Do pieces like that often make a big splash in people's lists at an event like this?
I think what part of what depends there is if it's a model for which we already know the rules. So Sacro Vault, like I'm thinking the parallel I want to draw is with Dynamo at Warmachine Weekend.
Okay.
When he came out, we didn't really know his rules, and we got the card and go, oh, this is what Dynamo does. Mm-hmm. And I mean, honestly, a lot of the Signar forums, the reaction was pretty negative about what he did. Currently, if you asked me how would I think about him, if you'd asked me back then, I would have given you a resounding meh. Now, I think he's exceptional. It's an exceptional Jack. Now that I've played him and proxied him before buying him, I'm really impressed with what he can do. So, when a model's pre-released that's never been played before, that's never been, like, we didn't really know the stats, it's hard to say if it'll make a splash. But something like the Sacro Vault, where we've known its rules for a long time now, I mean, we really knew them about 8 months ago, although the spoilers were so ludicrous, we figured there's no way they could be true. Turns out they were exactly as spoiled. And I think any player who is serious about, for example, qualifying for Masters or getting to the finals of some big event has at least probably played a couple games against it or played with it if they're playing mostly Circle or Gators. So I think you should, if that, for example, specifically if the Vault is released, I would expect to see it in some lists because it does change how some factions play.
Since I happen to play Convergence, and the suspicion is that we'll see the Convergence battle engine at this, do you expect to run into anything, run into a model like the Convergence battle engine that has literally, well, it feels like it's been around forever, but we haven't seen the model? Is that the type of thing that sometimes you worry about suddenly showing up at an event like this? Because usually at a con is where we're going to see a new big model like that show up for the first time.
Well, it's a good model. Again, I think a lot of Convergence players have proxied it for a while now. If they were interested in playing it, I don't think until a model is released it enters people's imagination as much until we can have the physical model.
Yes.
But I don't think it enters like your realm of like possibility. Like, oh, maybe what if I run into this? And it's really solid. So if they do have it there, I'd expect Convergence players to drop him for sure, or to drop it. I personally don't see a lot of Convergence in tournaments, so I don't know how widespread it will be. Even if it is released at TempleCon.
Now
that remains to be seen.
Yeah. Now, I know you're shall we say, a light hobbyist, to say the least. With models like the Convergence Battle Engine that are coming out in this new, well, I say new for Privateer Press, hard plastic. Is that, what do you feel on that? Because you obviously still have to assemble all your models before you get to play with them.
Unfortunately.
PP has, I wouldn't say the best reputation for mold lines and plastics. Do you see this as a good move for them, or is it just something they had to do because of the way their plastics have been coming out?
I think of all the models they've released, the huge based ones have come with the most problems. I mean, the Convergence Battle Engine and the medium based infantry are also a thing, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. And I had plenty of complaints there too, but the main issues I had were with like storm walls and like storm striders, and those were some of their earliest like battle engine colossals that they did.
Yeah.
But I've heard horror stories about galleons, and I've heard very good things about the plastic, the mold being used for the convergence engine.
Ah, okay.
I've heard very good things about it both from Piper 2 Press, which I mean you expect them to say good things,
Yeah.
but also from modelers and independent, I'd say, experts or professionals or whatever that have spent a lot of time winning golden demon events or equivalent, saying that they were really impressed.
Oh,
with the
that's
plastic
good to
used.
hear.
Yeah, it appears to be a pretty big step up in quality.
Excellent. Now, we had heard that they're going to try doing more of their jacks in this hard plastic, as well as some of the larger things like the battle engines. This has traditionally, in other hobbies, led to both more mobility for mechanical type models like jacks, where you get posable arms and stuff, and simultaneously most of the time less options for humans and beasts and stuff like that. Are you worried at all that we'll end up with GW syndrome, where there's 1,000 guys that are all in the same pose?
I mean, I don't think so. I think especially with beasts, I mean, when there was a switch over to the plastic kits, you had people complain about the beasts, especially I think the warp wolves, as well as the first set of troll heavies.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, for me, that argument doesn't hold too much weight, because there was only ever one, metal pureblood.
That's true.
Before the plastic kit, you still just had the one pose, and no one seemed to be, up in arms about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it just happens. You get people that are spoiled for choice, and granted, I mean, in the pureblood's case, the metal sculpt is better and more distinctive. But I mean, I think modding is going to be really where it gets interesting. Is if everything's made of hard plastic, things may be easier to reposition. It'll open itself to more modeling opportunities. And again, as you mentioned, I'm a pretty light hobbyist, so for me the creativity is usually limited to reposing. Nothing really more extensive than that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't really foresee a big problem with using hard plastic over what they use now, and I think a lot of modelers would applaud the choice, because it's easier to cut, less mold lines, less flashing. And that does seem to be the case. I mean, for example, I don't know if you're aware, but at Warmachine Weekend, DC showed us the painted Convergence battle engine.
Oh, I didn't see that. I only saw the sprues themselves.
Yeah, no, he had the whole thing ready to go. He showed us, and everyone was pretty impressed with the quality of the plastic. And DC goes, well, he's like, I'm a lazy modeler. I like to do the minimum amount of work when I'm building models. He's like, I haven't cleaned any mold lines on this. Like, I didn't do the due diligence.
Yeah.
And so one guy who was pretty good, who had a reputation for being a pretty good artist, had won quite a few awards. He looked over the whole model, and he couldn't find a flaw with the sculpt.
Wow, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, so I think the future is bright for that. And now, will it lead to, maybe less interesting poses, less interesting modeling opportunities? Maybe. So if all you do is just build the stock models,
mm-hmm.
But if you're the kind of guy who converts his stuff anyway,
you don't think it's gonna?
I don't think it'll make a big difference. I mean, I think anyone who doesn't like the look of a specific model will go the extra mile and mod
They'll be changing it anyway, so it's not really going to be that much of an issue.
Yeah.
As a Convergence player, I am really hoping they will show up. I may or may not have ninja shoppers out there looking for a couple of those for me already. So it's my hope that, again, pimping my YouTube channel, one of the things we have on Fridays is a show called What's in the Box, which is an unboxing show where we do a little discussion of, often we'll try and get the metal and plastic versions of a model together so that you can see the differences and stuff like that. And I'm really hoping that the Friday after TempleCon I'll be able to do a What's in the Box show about that new type of model. So we've talked a little bit about you're getting ready for the game, a little bit about the modeling and stuff like that, a little bit about day of. What do you do on the last day of a con, or even the day after? How do you recover from an event like this?
Well, usually the end of a con is going to be punctuated by a lot of alcohol, maybe a 30-man game of werewolf, or you may be the type that goes to bed early. Those are pretty rare, from my understanding. And usually, though, post-con there's going to be a few, I guess, few characteristics of any sort of debriefing or decompression. I mean, the stuff everyone likes to do is go over battles, with friends when you're driving back or flying back or whatever. You'll discuss the heartbreaks, the close losses, the games you should have won, or if you happen to have won the whole thing. I mean, you'll probably be the guy with the shit-eating grin on his face the whole way. But I mean, usually, yeah, there's gonna be agonizing over mistakes. If you made a lot, there'll be discussion of. I think that's the funny thing, though, is I think after most conventions, people do not stop talking about Warmachine. At least I'll admit I am a competitive player, and a lot of my friends are as well. And we don't stop talking about the game once the con is over. We might talk about it even more.
So, do you find yourself actually after a con, when you've spent all that much intense time with the game, even more I would not say revitalized, but you have a continued really big attraction to the game, as opposed to you saying, I don't want to do that for a couple of days? Or
yeah, it's energizing. It's energizing because you'll go, I saw my opponent round 3 of day 2, whatever, he had this awesome combo that I hadn't seen before. And it was really exciting to, it was really cool to see. I can't wait to try it out. You'll probably be discussing new releases. You'll be discussing what the winner of the event used. Mm-hmm. If it's something unusual, or if it's Legion, you'll go, of course, Ravagers and Angels. I mean, that's everyone, right?
Yeah.
So you will. At least that's my experience. And I mean, new releases, again, because cons are usually punctuated with exclusives, and I mean, there's going to be the keynote at this, and I don't see how that won't come up in topic of conversation. But so yes, I mean, but if there's one thing I find is that after a con, I'm ready to just all I want to do is get more games in and process the information I've gained from that convention or that big event.
That sounds great, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you after the con, and we'll actually be able to get more of sort of an after-action report.
Okay.
Now, since we've sort of gotten through that whole TempleCon thing and sort of what you're doing to before and after, how does something like going TempleCon play into say the larger game of getting into something like the Canadian WTC team for this year? Is there things that you do at a con like this because you're looking to get into that team as opposed that you wouldn't normally do, or is it just sort of all the same things, you just happen to talk to different people?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever approached an event thinking to myself, well, I need to do X, Y, Z to help qualify for this team. I think, I mean, in the end, we're playing Warmachine, right? Obviously, I think you should approach any competitive event. If you're the type of person that wants to be on a national team, you should approach any big event like that with a hunger to win and to sort of prove yourself, because of course that'll be important in the selection process, which is currently wrapping up in a couple weeks for Canada. Mm-hmm. So yes, I mean, I think you should approach events like that anyway. Like, if I, for example, wasn't planning on applying for the WTC because family reasons or financial or because I was, I was going to be busy that weekend, I still think I would approach an event like TempleCon identically.
Okay.
I think I would still go with that same desire to perform well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's really great. Okay, well, we've got a couple little questions from the stream. Well, we have Quick and the Dad asking, any tips on the WTC format in preparation for the OTC? Sorry, I should break those acronyms out for people who aren't used to this. So it's the World Team Championship format in preparation for the Ontario Team Championships.
Yeah, which is, the identical format. Same list selection process, which can be found, from the WTC website. I think if your team, your captain, or what have you, is trying to figure out the list selection process, what it really comes down to is one team should, in theory, get 3 matchups they like, and the other one will get 2. And this is balanced by the selection of terrain, or of boards on which the matches are played, and that is a big factor. There are some teams that explicitly went in with under the assumption that they were going to lose every single list selection roll-off, in the sense that they would only get to pick 2, but that this was good because it let them pick the tables which to them mattered more. So that's one thing to consider, is that there is the angle where picking the terrain is going to matter more. And I think that's a completely sound argument, because who hasn't had issues clearing an angel that's hiding behind a linear obstacle? I know I'm ragging a lot on Legion, but well, if there's a trench on your side of the board, or a trench that's perfectly placed, and your teammate can use that extremely well, then that may matter more than what matchup they're playing. That's one thing. Knowing that you can usually assume to keep yourself completely safe from at least one matchup. Like, one teammate should, in theory, be able to be kept completely safe from one very negative matchup. You want to keep that in mind.
Okay.
In the sense that if there's one that's just, everyone agrees on is going to be close to unwinnable, which is rare, but it can happen, there's always usually a way to engineer yourself out of that.
Okay, great.
Out of that one matchup.
That sounds good. Another question from KD GUI Bo. Oh, I screw up your name all the time. Yes, it's KD Gibo. Sorry.
Okay.
What tournament format do you prefer? Masters, IG, Hardcore? Is there one that you really like playing?
It's Masters 100%. I enjoyed the 3 list previously, but I do think I will enjoy the ADR as well. I have so far. We've had a couple practice ADR events already, and it has been excellent. Like, it wasn't a Masters event, but we were using the ADR, I guess, variant, although it's not really technically that in Steamroller. It's been excellent so far. It has me playing models I would never have thought I'd put on the table. It makes me it makes me buy casters I've never used before. It makes me want to play all sorts of strange, off-the-wall things, and that's not something I ever felt compelled to do with Iron Gauntlet, although I did like the original format. And Hardcore is not really my thing, I guess. But so really, it's got to be all about Masters, and I love ADR. It is an excellent idea for Privateer Press, and the Vanguard bonus is also extremely strong. I think if you're not evaluating the casters in the ADR list, and I say this as a Signar player, which I feel we may have gotten the worst ADR list. If you're not evaluating your options, you may want to rethink it, because it's good with every faction. Bar none. It is good with them, and it can really elevate. it can really elevate some casters. I've had success with Strakov,
No.
And I
So,
had success.
do you
Sorry.
have a favorite ADR pair yet?
Well,
It doesn't necessarily have to be from your faction or something you've even played, but is there something you looked at when you're reading that document and you're like, oh my god, why did they have those two on that list?
Doomshaper 2 and Grim 2 was a big one.
Yeah, I can see that.
That was an eyebrow raiser. Butcher 1 and Strakov for me was big, and it got me really excited about putting some Kadar on the table, which I did a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Convergence is
everything but
understandable.
Lucont. Like, I mean, we've only got so many casters right now. That's one of the things, again, as a Convergence player, I'm really hoping that we, in the speech that they give on, I guess it's Friday, at the opening ceremonies, that we'll actually get to, maybe they'll throw us a bone with an extra caster. We have at least seen Epic Mother and the Constellation, I think, in the card game come out already. So the hope is always there that one of those two will rear their head.
And that is actually maybe the one, perhaps, question I have about the format, or the one concern, is this idea that when a new caster is released,
Mm-hmm.
it is automatically in the active duty roster. I am skeptical about that decision. I understand that it's likely meant to spur interest in new releases.
I'm not sure that was needed, though. Generally, a new release, unless
Agreed.
it is like objectively bad. There's a lot of times someone's released and you're like, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to use this. But without someone who is actually bad, I don't see why people wouldn't just be moving towards that caster anyway, just for newness, if nothing else.
Well, and that's if we go with what I believe, that ADR is pretty much universally good,
Mm-hmm.
a caster would have to be pretty terrible, like a new release would have to be pretty awful for it not to be, in my opinion, automatically worth considering.
Yeah.
It would have to be very bad. So I think what this does ensure is, that your new releases will get played and considered, maybe even more than before, because there is, again, and where this really interests me is I guess I'm questioning where this process will take us, is when a caster is pre-released at a convention. Again,
okay.
because so say, and this is really funny. So say, for example, at Lock and Load this year, because the way ADR works, right, is end of June. Yeah, so end of June, the roster will be ostensibly swapped around.
Mm-hmm.
So what's funny is, so say there's a new caster released at Lock and Load. For that, those 4 weeks, if that caster ends up being, I don't like to use the word broken, but that caster ends up being extremely powerful,
Mm-hmm.
unintentionally perhaps.
Okay.
Errata takes a while.
Yeah.
By its nature. And this is not to rag on the playtesting process, but if someone can quickly unlock a new release, a pre-release, they see it on Thursday, they're so excited about it, think about it all night, Friday morning they come up with, a face-smashing list, is that really, is that healthy for the game, I guess is my question.
Okay.
If they release something that's really utterly over the top bananas, and they make it available for that con, does this now become the con of X?
Okay, you're worried that it will just supersede everything else.
Yeah, and again, people will always jump on the flavor of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And by people, I mean everyone. I mean, it's hard not to get swept up in the enthusiasm when something new and powerful comes out. But I guess, when Butcher 3 was first released at Gen Con, everyone was really wowed by him. And so if he, so now if we look back on new releases, new pre-releases, I ask myself, well, how would this have been, if Butcher 3 gets specialists or Bradigus gets specialists?
Ooh, Yeah.
You know, who was
or Morvana too, say.
Right, if she gets pre-released, you know, so I guess it's going to hinge a lot on how balanced these new casters are when they're pre-released. It's going to hinge a lot on that. Everything else about ADR I absolutely love. That's my one concern.
Do you think that we'll see new casters release dates change because of ADR? Will we see casters released at the end, you know, say 2 weeks or 3 weeks in the cycle at the end, so that if there is some kind of problem, maybe they'll only have a couple of weeks to decide, and then if they like them, they can add them to the new roster, and if they don't, if they seem to be way too powerful, they'll just leave them out? Or do you think they'll just release at their normal time and just where things may fall?
I think that for them, it's really just released when it's ready. I don't think the status of ADR is going to influence release of models.
Okay.
I don't think that's just because of how how we know they pretty much release things as available. I don't think that will come into play, especially because I think Privateer Press might also put a little more stock into Iron Gauntlet, if anything else.
Yeah.
It would really surprise me if they let the way ADR works currently influence their
influence their release schedule. Okay.
I doubt that.
Well, we've gone on for quite a bit of time now. So, is there anybody you'd like to shout out to? Anything you'd like to bring up or anything before we shut down the stream?
No, nothing really comes to mind.
Okay, great. Well, then it has been a pleasure to have you on, Refyougee.
Likewise.
And we will hope to talk to you after TempleCon.
Yeah, for sure. You know where to find me.
Great. So this is Semi-Auto Magic signing out for Miffed and Semi. Fuck shit up. Thanks, everyone.